Okay, so hi and good evening. And today was the 18th day of the Omer. So the 18th day of the Omer was Netzach Sheba Tiferet. So Tiferet is um, my yoga studio's name is Tiferet Movement because Tiferet is really the goal of everything we're trying to do. We're trying to come into a place of balance. So this is a very special week. So the Hayom Yom actually speaks about uh, the Rebbe Maharash, who was born in the week of Tiferet, Tiferet Sheba Tiferet. So when he was 7 years old and he did very well in his studies, tested by his father, the Tzemach Tzedek. So his teacher was very impressed. And he said to the Tzemach Tzedek, hasn't he done really well? And the Tzemach Tzedek responded, well, you shouldn't be surprised because he's Tiferet Sheba Tiferet. Of course he's going to do well. You shouldn't be surprised that he's doing well. So Tiferet is this beautiful sphera or midah of being in balance. And so today was Netzach of Tiferet, and tonight and tomorrow will be Hod of Tiferet. So the Netzach of Tiferet is to be very determined to make sure that one is conscious and ambitious almost to find this balance in our life, the balance between the Chesed and the Gevurah. And Hod would be of Tiferet, would be that while we're being ambitious, we also have to be forgiving. We also have to be acknowledging of our limitations, acknowledging of things that come up that can throw us off, that we can have that acknowledgement and understanding and compassion in our effort to bring about the state of Tiferet. And just before that, just before going on into the Tanya, there's just one other point about the Sfira Ta'ome, because really this is the festival that we're in now, an ongoing festival of the Sfirot. So I particularly love the idea of the Sfirot and what they mean and how to come into balance with them. And probably I became a yoga teacher really because of the Sfirot, because I wanted to learn how to teach them. And I started teaching them through movements of the body and then wanted to learn how to do that safely for people. So it's a very deep study, the refinement of the Sfirot and the utilizing the Sfirot for our emotional, spiritual, psychological well-being. So this is some people call this time the time of the Omer, but we could also say this is the time where we're in the festival of the Sfirot, ongoing 7 weeks festival or focus on the Sfirot. So during this time at a Farbrengen, quite a few years ago, in the year somewhere between 1891 and 1893, somebody said the Alter Rebbe's Hasidim were always keeping count. And one of the Rebbes liked that a great deal, saying that idea characterizes man's avoda, that not only should we be conscious of all the sfirot and their meanings and how to balance them and everything, but the idea of counting and counting time, that the hours must be counted hours, then the days will be counted days. When a day passes, one should know what he has accomplished and what remains yet to be done. In general, one should always see to it that tomorrow should be much better than today. So that idea of counting time and being conscious of time and not being kind of laissez-faire about the passage of time. Okay, so that was our little warm-up. And now we've been doing chapter 12 of Tanya, And chapter 12 of Tanya is this focus on the Benoni. And the Benoni is, so I got some insights into talking about the Benoni from listening to Rabbi Miller, Chaim Miller, and from Rabbi Manis Friedman. And they both brought some very nice examples of how to get a sense of the Benoni in ways that maybe we haven't yet come to. So the one thing is that Chaim Miller contextualized the fact that all of Tanya is called the Sefer Shel Beinonim. It's really a book written for the Benoni. And he was saying that at the time when the Alter Rebbe created the teachings of the Tanya, he had a very righteous congregation. He had a congregation of people who were really trying really hard to do everything they needed to do, trying to do all the mitzvahs, trying to do, to be righteous, trying to not sin, trying to do all these things. And yet the impulses of a human being are such that one doesn't always act perfectly or think perfectly, or certainly there were temptations that would come up. And the way Chaim Miller suggested that it possibly was that people would come to the Alter Rebbe and say, I don't know what to do. I'm still having these urges. I'm still having these temptations. And in response, the Alter Rebbe wanted to reassure all of his Hasidim that that is the way we have been created, that we will always have temptations, but it's really up to us how we deal with those temptations, and that that is actually the way we were created, and for good reason, because that is essentially what it means to be human. So just to reiterate and to review, that Tzaddik has no desire or interest in certain things, so they don't appeal to him. The Benoni is a person who has interest in certain appetites, tivas, etc., but he doesn't succumb to them. So Rabbi Manis Friedman gave a very compelling illustration. He said, imagine that you go up to, you walk past a window, and inside the window in a store, you see something that is really appealing to you. So you look at it and you think to yourself, wow, I'd really love to have that object. I'd really love to have that, wear it, enjoy it, eat it, whatever. But you look at the price tag and it's out of your budget. So you know that you want it, but you can't have it because it's out. You can't afford it. It's beyond your price range. So you walk away. So he said, that's the Benoni. A Rasha looks at it. He can't afford it. He wants it just the same as the Benoni, but he walks away and he has plans maybe of how he could come back and get it without paying for it. Maybe he'll bring a brick. Maybe he'll break the lock. Maybe he'll do something, but he has a plan of getting something in a way that's not allowed. So for the Benoni, if he explained very nicely that it's not that he doesn't want certain things. It's not that he doesn't desire certain things, but if Hashem said you can't do it, then he doesn't do it. He's obedient to that rule. So his inclinations are the same as that of the tzaddik, but he doesn't succumb. So I just thought I would share those two examples that I thought were both illustrative in different ways. Now, where we were up to in looking inside, we were halfway through chapter 12, which was a focus on the Benoni. And I'll just read on here where it's a little bit of a background. It says, I think, okay. So trying to find a good place to start reading that we can introduce where we're up to. So basically the Tanya asserts that because we have control over our thought, speech, and our action, we can direct, because we have self-control, we can direct the garments of our soul. If you remember, we were saying that there's the essence, the etzem of the soul, and then there's the garments of the soul. So the etzem of the soul is something of where the wanting comes from. But the garments of the soul are how that wanting manifests into thought, speech, or action. So then we were saying that the Benoni, being a human being, and the Tanya, the Bala Tanya wants us all to know is that really we can strive to be the Benoni. So he can, if his mind wills it, divert his attention completely from that which his heart craves and turn his attention in the exact opposite direction, that really we can put our mind over our heart. And then he says that we can turn our thoughts into opposite directions, into a holy direction. And then he brings a quote. Then I saw that wisdom surpasses folly as light surpasses darkness. So this quote is basically bringing us the idea that we can bring enlightenment to our behavior through our consciousness. So I'll read the explanation here. Um, mm, um, the Alter Rebbe is explaining to illustrate how wisdom is superior to folly. The superiority of light over darkness is manifest in the ability of a tiny ray of light to banish a great deal of darkness. So the light doesn't have to battle the darkness to banish it. The darkness disappears as a matter of course with the appearance of light. In the same way is the wisdom of holiness superior to the folly of evil. A mere ray of holiness suffices to banish, as a matter of course, a great deal of evil folly. So we were speaking also last time when we learned, and it was quite a few weeks ago before Pesach, that when a person who might be tempted by various things that he sees or various appetites that get stimulated in his environment, when he's davening, so then at that time the inclination can be somewhat neutralized. During Kriyat Shema, we said, or Shmona Esrei. And that illumination, that feeling of connection to Hashem, while he's in the davening, while he's saying Shema, is going to enable him to kind of, we were talking in terms of a battle, we were talking in terms of a small city, we were talking in terms of two armies trying to obtain domination over the small city. So just as light has superiority, power, and dominion over darkness, and a little physical light banishes a great deal of darkness, so the same thing, the foolishness of the klippa and the sitra achra of the animal soul, which is located in the left part of the heart, so that can be sort of pushed away or dislocated or neutralized by the wisdom of the divine soul that is in the brain. So we're using this analogy that both the left side of the heart, the sitra achra, the animal soul, and the right side of the heart, which is the godly soul, which is in the right side of the heart and in the brain, they're both trying to gain domination over the small city, but that which is coming from the wisdom of the divine soul that's in the brain or in the right side of the heart, that can get dominion over the small city, and it can get dominion over the thought, speech, and action, as we've said before. And but it's just repeating here that it's not that he doesn't want to do something negative. It's just that he doesn't allow himself. He doesn't allow his garments to get involved in something not holy, not his speech, not his thought, not his action. And so so it's mentioning here, I guess, during prayer, after prayer, when this burning love of Hashem is no longer revealed in the right part of his heart, then maybe it's possible, once he's not davening, once he's not kind of invigorating that holy side of himself, it's possible then that the other team, so to speak, is going to get a chance to articulate itself, and then he'll use his conscious awareness, his discipline, his capacity to be obedient, let's say, to have an awareness of Hashem in the world, to not succumb. And the way Rabbi Friedman explained it is that when a Rasha is sinning, in a way, at the time that he's sinning, he's forgetting Hashem's presence in the world. He's forgetting that Hashem is watching him, caring for him, loving him. He's obviously feeling that disconnect. But the Benoni doesn't feel that disconnect. He is always feeling connected. So the taivas, the inclinations, the what's the word? That which appeals will still come, and the temptations is what I'm looking for. It will come, but he's going to, he has this natural love and fear of Hashem that will enable him to prevail and dominate over the craving of the animal's soul. And so that's, and then he says, but sometimes when it comes to thought, you can't always control the thought. The thought comes even when you don't want it to come. So what distinguishes the Benoni is that even if he will get a thought that could lead him to something not so kosher, he will immediately, with two hands, so to speak, push away the thought or push away his mind from that thought. He doesn't indulge it. He's not going to say, oh, this temptation is coming to me and I have to kind of get in touch with my feelings and how I feel about it, and maybe it's coming to me for a reason or whatever. If it's something that is not kosher, not allowed, not part of being a godly person, so the thought comes into his mind, and because he has such yirat shamayim and self-control, but he lives in a world where he's got a very strong perception and awareness of Hashem in everything and all around and part of himself, he will have the capacity, if the thought comes into his mind, to push away this thought with both hands. And that's where also the difference between him and a Rasha would be, that the Rasha would get the same thought, but then he would indulge the thought and allow that thought to take root and develop. We're talking about seeds and growth. If the Rasha would get a thought, and as I said, we can't control the thoughts that come into our mind. If the Rasha would give that thought, then he would indulge the thought, whereas the Benoni pushes it away with both hands. And then the Tanya also says that this is not only true, all of this pushing away with both hands is not only true when it comes to sinning against Hashem, it is also true when it comes to sinning against a person, that when it could come into your heart, a thought or a feeling that is of animosity or hatred or jealousy or anger or a grudge against another person, so too the Benoni will not allow these negative feelings to ferment and kind of take root in his mind. He won't allow them to develop. he's going to use his mind to prevail over and dominate the feelings of his heart to do the exact opposite, which is interesting, to conduct himself towards his fellow with the quality of kindness rather than gevura, and to display towards his fellow a disproportionate amount of love in suffering from him to the furthest extreme without being provoked into anger, chas v'shalom, or to take revenge, chas v'shalom, but on the contrary, to repay offenders with favors. So now, of course, this is a very high level because it's very human. If somebody offends us or insults us, we kind of want to feel self-righteous and feel like we have a right to respond in kind to some degree. So the Tanya here is speaking in very, very strong language, and we don't know what the person did to invoke in you all these negative feelings. So I would say that one wouldn't want to make of himself into a schmutter. If a person's treating you badly, you're not meant to be play a victim, or you're not meant to just allow yourself to be abused in some way. But if a person, and here I'm interjecting my own personal feelings and emotions on the words of the Tanya here, but the Tanya is saying basically, and I'll read it again, that it just says here, in matters between man and his fellow, evil feelings towards his fellow that rises in his heart with an animosity or hatred of jealousy, anger, or a grudge, he will bar them from his mind and refuse to even think of them. And then he will prevail on his heart to cultivate the opposite feelings, to conduct himself towards his fellow with the quality of kindness, not gevura, where that could engender hatred or anger, and to display towards his fellow a disproportionate amount of love and then it says here, in suffering from him to the furthest extreme. So I just want to read this in Hebrew. V'chiba yetera muda'at lo lisbol mimenu ad katse ha'acharon. Wow. So without being provoked into anger, God forbid, or to take revenge in kind, chas v'shalom, even without anger, but to repay offenders with favors. So I guess also there's the idea here to not get angry in your heart. I've been learning recently about the quality of equanimity. So if somebody treats you badly, I would say that to get angry in your heart would be going against what's recommended here, but you don't necessarily have to stay close and friendly to such a person as keeping them as your best friend, but to get angry and to take revenge or to really get emotionally into a negative state would be definitely discouraged. But the Tanya goes a lot further than I'm going in my sort of modification of these words, because the Tanya is saying, actually, you need to repay offenders with favors. And then it brings the example of Yosef, and how he behaved in relation to his brothers, that he repaid them for the suffering that they brought upon him with kindness and favors. So this is the quote from the Tanya, to learn from Yosef to repay offenders with favors. Ela adarabba ligmor lechayavim tovot, כמו שכתוב בזוהר, ללמוד מיוסף עם אחיו. So the Benoni does not permit the evil in his heart to express itself in thought, word, or deed. So it does acknowledge that in his heart he might have the inclination to do some not such nice things to the neighbor who wasn't so kind to him, but he's not going to allow this to manifest in thought, word, and action. It is thus understood from this chapter that with regard to practice, the divine soul is the Benoni's only master. He neither thinks, speaks, nor does anything forbidden, but acts only in accordance with Torah and mitzvot. And here. So, I mean, there's a lot to say about this in terms of human behavior, that I don't like the idea that you're hating him in your heart, but you're just not showing it. Obviously, you don't want to even have that feeling in your heart either, right? So, but certainly the Tanya is encouraging us that even when a person has been provoked to anger or has been insulted or somebody's caused one some harm or behaved in such a way as to give rise to some animosity or negative feelings, to do the same thing as one does in serving Hashem, that not to repay negativity with negativity, but to do one's best to redirect and to learn from Yosef to repay hatred with kindness and to behave with kindness. So that brings us to the end of chapter 12. So I'm going to put the recording on pause at this point, and let's see, put the recording on 1 second. All right, so that brings to an end chapter 12. This was part 2 of chapter 12. And in Metz Hashem, we will continue with chapter 13 in the near future. So thank you very much for listening.